the Team VVV Awards 2018, sponsored by Ben Green Racing and Thrustmaster.
Hi guys, well we're continuing on with our Team VVV Racing Game Awards 2018. We're now looking at the award for the Best Environment Selection. So this award celebrates not just necessarily the sheer quantity of tracks in the racing game, but also the quality of the selection, whether it's celebrating technical achievements like advancements in laser scanning technology, or just the overall sense of atmosphere it provides. Joining me to debate this is Kevin.
Hi guys.
And Alan.
Hello viewers.
So going through the list of nominations for Best Environment Selection, we have Project Cars 2, Forza Motorsport 7, Gran Turismo Sport, WRC 7, MXGP 3, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So quite a selection there. So I guess if we kick off then with Project Cars 2, I mean, in terms of the sheer quantity of the selection, Project Cars 2 is head and shoulders above the competition here. You've got 60 locations and over 130 track layouts. So for motorsport fans, I think it really is a dream come true. It just has so many tracks that you don't normally see in racing games, such as historic British circuits. You can basically recreate the British Touring Car Championship in Project Cars 2. It's that diverse. Alan, what was your overall thoughts on Project Cars 2's track selection?
Well, I think firstly, obviously, you say in terms of range, it's a phenomenal selection in terms of the range that's available. I think the fact that the tracks are available in all weather conditions and all seasons, is amazing in terms of the detail of that environment. It's not just an environment; it's a living, breathing environment in terms of the weather and all the things you can't see that are going on there as well. So it's a real technical marvel. I think the tracks themselves, obviously, a lot of them have been scanned. They've used various different scanning techniques, photo techniques, but either way, they've ended up with tactile environments that look bang on in terms of realism. I think in some cases, some of them are a little bit soulless, so I'd like to have had a bit more in the way of crowd, a bit more intensity that I felt was more present in Project Cars 1 in some ways than it is in Project Cars 2. And I can't put my finger on all the tracks, but there is something about some of them in terms of the graphical style I'm not as keen on. But in terms of the fundamental detail that's gone into it, I think it's very impressive.
Yeah, I think what really elevates it for me as well is just the lack of restrictions, like you said. Like, if you want to race on Brands Hatch, for example, in the snow, you can, whereas in other games they're a bit more restricted.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the track transforms, and also, the lighting is all part of it. When you set the track to winter, the sun rises lower in the sky, and it gives you that winter glow. And there's a lot of detail, environmental sort of lighting and effects that go into it. And though the sun isn't strictly related to a specific environment, it's the way it all works together. Is on another level in terms of what they were trying to accomplish. So the scale and the amount of environments and the detail level is certainly breaking new ground. Absolutely.
And as we love to point out, it even has more rallycross tracks than the official rallycross game.
It's an amazing selection. I mean, particularly if you're a fan of European tracks, it has just about everything. It pretty much ticks all the boxes, and not many tracks that are missing here. So it's and I love sort of going to the old British tracks and having a nice race around those, which don't typically end up in racing games. You think back of old games like Tocker that had all these British tracks, so it's fantastic to see them in Project Cars 2. And like I said, there's just such a fantastic selection, all with weather and time of day as well. Like Alan said, don't look perhaps as good as Project Cars 1 visually, but when you factor in the fact that it has weather and stuff, and every track they have to make a compromise, and so I guess the graphics was one area that had to be compromised. But in terms of sheer numbers, it's basically untouchable at the moment. So we have to recognize this game as certainly one of the best games with phenomenal track selection.
Yeah, a very comprehensive selection, especially for motorsport fans. It's surprising that it even has more tracks than some of the leaders in the console racing simulation market, like Forza and Gran Turismo, which we'll move on to now. So we start with Forza Motorsport 7. I guess with with Forza 7, the main new track was the Dubai circuit, which looks visually stunning, but was it that interesting a track to race around, would you say, Alan?
Dubai was... It had nice rock, really, really nice textured rock. But it was dull as ditch water in some respects, and part of it was down to the handling model. I just felt like that corner, though, that aspect going up the hill, felt like those corners went on forever. And there was something about it that didn't wow me as much as I wanted it to. It didn't wow me very much. The tunnel was dark, bland, and uninspiring. There was nothing really very colourful to it. There wasn't like lighting or huge buildings or views in that sense. It was a nice technical showcase for what it was. So in that sense, I felt that, you know, it was nice, nothing special. I think the environments are always solid in Forza. I think when you look at the autumn raceway, I forget the name of it now, but Autumn Ring, I was quite disappointed with that. I was quite, you know, I've said before, they Herman tilted it and they made the track super wide and it lost its soul. It's utterly soulless now. I mean, it's dead. That's not the track we love and remember. But they've changed it for their new handling. And, you know, unfortunately, they've absolutely ruined it in terms of the environment there. So disappointed with that and the look of it. I think Forza's gone for this new style since Forza Motorsport 5, where it looked amazing, Forza Motorsport 5, on the original build we had pre-release of the Xbox One. But then they dialed the game back for the hardware, and they've never really managed to dial it back up again. And it doesn't look now, even on Xbox One X, as good as it did on the whatever the development hardware was back, you know, 4 years ago. So, you know, I think Forza's solid, but it's not necessarily spectacular. But range of environments is impressive, and overall detail very impressive as well. So it's very competitive in this field, and one cannot fault the technology of Turn 10. I just wish they'd done better, especially with Autumn Ring and Dubai. You know, Dubai's all right, but you know, it's just not enough to really blow my socks off, and it should do. You know, that's the point. As it's a launch game for Xbox One X, people should come to that and say, "Wow, oh my God, what game is that?" And they're not doing that. But I think we will.
That actually reminds me, if you think back,
yeah,
you know, do you remember when they showed off the Xbox One X and they had Forza 6, I think it was, running on the Xbox One X? They showed that screenshot, which looked incredible. Yeah. All the cars line up at the grid. You had the amazing weather effects. It just looked mind blowing. And they were saying that it only utilized, I think it's about 70% of the power. So naturally, we expect something along that lines for Forza 7, and it just didn't live up to it, did it, Alan?
No, it didn't. Like you say, it just didn't. We expected more, I think, of it. There, you know, and yeah, I mean, when you look at it, it's better than the Xbox One version, obviously, but it's technically it's a great showcase. You know, it's still one of the best looking racing games. But I don't know. There's something about it that still, you know, something like Drive Club blows me away in a way in which Forza doesn't. And I feel they're playing very safe at the moment every year. They've got a very solid plan of development. You're not going to see any major changes to Forza in terms of development until the new Xbox launches in a few years' time. Then you'll probably see a whole new rejig. I think in that sense, Playground Games have overtaken Turn 10 in terms of their, you know, we talked about in the DLC, their ambition, and their ambition is far beyond what Turn 10 is doing amazingly. And I think I can't wait to see what they do in the future of Forza Horizon, because it's so much more exciting right now than what we're seeing, say, from Turn 10, which is so sedate in its way in terms of environmental look and feel. So, yeah, I mean, at the moment, solid, if, you know, somewhat uninspiring at times.
Yeah, I think it needed more original circuits to really set it apart. You know, we're starting to see the same racing tracks appear in these games all the time. So they really need that the more creative original circuits to set them apart. You know, something we used to see a lot of in Gran Turismo, for example, and for me anyway, with GT Sport, if we move on to that now, completely disappointed me in terms of the overall track selection. Yeah, Gran Turismo used to be renowned for its original circuits like High Speed Ring, Clubman, etc., etc. I could go on forever. but they're conspicuously absent in GT Sport. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, they look amazing, as you'd expect for a Gran Turismo game, but they also seemed a bit soulless as well at times, which is, I think, a criticism Gran Turismo has had for quite a long time now. Kevin, you've probably played GT Sport more than all of us combined. What were your thoughts on the track selection?
Yeah, I mean, I guess with the new focus of the sport mode, they wanted to add racing tracks, real world racing tracks over their original creations from years gone past. So I can understand that, but the fact that they're now sort of doing a U-turn, introducing a single player campaign, and now they're sort of flirting with the idea of adding original tracks, it's sort of admitting guilt, isn't it, that perhaps they released a product that didn't appeal to as many people as they perhaps expected. So you know, on launch, GT Sports track list was very bare, and it is to this day. So you know, it's lacking character, isn't it? I guess this is what you get when you have a racing game. You're going to have these sort of real world tracks, and you're going to lose that magic that Gran Turismo has. You know, all these years we've been playing the high speed rings, the special Route 5, and all these amazing tracks, and the fact that there's none here, it really does sort of leave that sort of magic to one side, doesn't it? And it just feels lacking overall. There are, you know, a reasonable amount of tracks I would say GT Sport has, but considering that there's multiple layouts for them, it sort of pads out the numbers. But overall, it's a disappointing lack of tracks for me, GT Sport, as well as a number of other areas that it sort of lacks. But that'll be for a future podcast.
Well, you know, I mean, I really enjoyed driving some of GT's tracks. I mean, it's got some really great tracks, really flowing, good curves, good curbs, nice views, you know, downhill, and you see wonderful valleys and areas opening up in front of you. I mean, the view distance is incredible. But then it has some really poor ones, you know, Northern Isle Speedway.
Yeah.
There is nothing about that is positive for me. I can't stand that circuit. Every time there's a race that comes up on it, I dread it. You know, it's just, you know, 20 minutes of going dizzy, and you're just looking at the floor. And that's all you're really looking at in terms of getting on the power, off the power, on the power, off the power. There's nothing to do but pure boredom. So I think from a technical perspective, obviously amazing job again, 60 frames solid, really nice draw distance, expansive environments, a lot of detail there. But there is we mentioned a lack of life. I mentioned this in the very early build a couple of years ago. And though some things have improved, there's a lot of things that haven't. And I think Tokyo is one of those, you know, in the sense that there's not enough grit and dirt on the road. There's not enough realism to it in terms of the look and feel.
With the case of Tokyo, I think they're struggling from a technical standpoint, because when I race at Tokyo at night, you actually see fences pop in. And I'm not talking one or two, I'm talking constantly. If you look far ahead, you will see constantly, you see these fences popping in out of nowhere. So it seems they're struggling technically on that particular track, and perhaps that's why they couldn't add crowds and things. So for whatever reason, that track, it just doesn't seem to compute very well.
Crowds would add a lot, wouldn't they? I mean, there is a lot of times when you think it'd be nice, and like you say, it doesn't have, in terms of environment selection. So we look at it first in terms of environment selection. There's not a lot to choose from. There's not a lot of the old tracks that everybody loves in there, and there's no excuse not to have them. They don't have to design them, do they? They've already designed them all. They just need to be remade. So there's lacking in number in terms of 2017. In terms of, you know, obviously they're not as dynamic as the range of weather and conditions you can get in project cars. And yeah, I mean, just in terms of the range that are available, they're quite, I mean, the ovals are mind-numbingly dull. They really are frustrating to, you know, to have to even waste your life on. So in that sense, some really great environments in there, some really solid, big environments, but not certainly, you know, not the best in sense of the range that they have on offer. There's a lot of room for improvement, and I'm sure they will build upon that.
Yeah, I think in fairness, the new called Dragon Trail circuit was okay. But
it's a future classic. I think it has a nice sort of flow to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few of them that have a good flow. I mean, there is
a
few circuits, and I mentioned that when I was driving them. I just can't remember the names on them all. Basically, my my head is forgetting the names of circuits. I know drive so many. But yeah, there's some really lovely circuits in there, really great circuits. There's just some really not so great circuits in there as well. So
like the rally circuits as well.
Oh goodness, yeah.
Which leads me on.
Yeah,
leads me nicely on to WRC7.
Yes. Hey.
So if we move on now to WRC7 with that very neat segue. In terms of range, again, I think we did criticize WRC7 a bit for lacking special stages. It's just not quite enough. But the overall quality, I think, really made up for that. If you look at the progress they've made from WRC 5 to 6 to 7, WRC7's circuit design really added a new layer of realism. They're much narrower, much more intense, and much longer as well, where we had of course the epic stages that could take sometimes up to 15 minutes. I think it really encapsulated that sense of journey you get on a rally special stage. So Kevin, what were your thoughts on WRC7's environment selection? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, they're lacking numbers, but like you say, they have this this sort of life to them. They not only have the length, but they have this. We talk about the foliage that Killerton managed to do. I don't know how they do it, but they seem head and shoulders above anyone else, and it really does add so much realism to the tracks. And with rally tracks, not a lot to rally tracks really, is there's a lot of trees and foliage, and you've got your track, and that's basically it. Away you go. And it's visually, I think it looks much better than say Dirt 4. I think Dirt 4's environments were dull and lifeless in comparison.
Very flat as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, WRC's tracks were a challenge. You had lots of bumps, which sort of differentiated it from older titles. And of course, with the physics models, well, it was all very satisfying to play on. And it certainly was one of the surprises of the year for me, actually, in terms of environments. I think WRC7 really did step up massively from 6, and like we saw with 6 from 5, but perhaps even a bigger step up again. So fantastic game to play, fantastic environments. We just needed more.
Yeah.
WRC, wonderful graphics, in terms of the step forward made from the previous versions. We had nice textures on Monte Carlo. We had nice lighting, really nice step forward throughout. The stages look good. Kevin has mentioned the foliage. They do have great foliage, and you'll see that in the course Isle of Man TT as well. And just really nice. I think the environments have really thought about making environments that feel like proper rally tracks, that would sit in that environment quite comfortably. And they've worked around that and developed it in pretty much every way they can. The only thing they don't have really, they've got more crowds than they've had before as well, but obviously they could always do with more. That's technical limitations. I think very nice. I think the only thing that lets them down is there's just not enough. So it's one of those areas where, from a technical standpoint, it's solid. It's not the best in the industry, but it's really good. It's not got enough in it. That's a bit of a mark against them there. They really do need more in terms of locations and stages and details. But either way, I think it's just all round really solid.
Yeah, exactly. Killerton really stepped up their game in pretty much all areas on WRC7, but the design of the environments was certainly a standout. While we're still on the subject of off-road racing games, our next nomination is MXGP 3. So, of course, it has all the licensed tracks, as you'd expect in the MXG Championship. But what really set MXGP 3 apart was the shift to Unreal Engine 4. This really brought the circuits to life, I think, in comparison to previous Milestone games, where you could always criticize them for being a bit sterile, a bit lifeless. But Unreal Engine 4, just with the more realistic lighting, really really brought these tracks to life again.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I saw the very first footage of MXGP 3, and my mind was blown. This was such a different game to 2. I wasn't excited very much for 3, but when I saw the graphical, the difference, and the deformations such is, incredible. I mean, this was one of my surprises of the year, which says a lot because there's been a lot of racing games released this year.
Yeah. It's a bit like with Project Cars 2's Live Track 3.0, because obviously MXGP 3 has track deformation, which alters the track over time after each lap, and that really does add to the experience. It really adds more challenge, and you feel like you are going around a living environment. Yeah, so it's a massive difference, step forward from MXGP2.
Yeah, you talk about living environment. I mean, you look at the tracks; they're laced with crowds, and we're not talking just a few people, one deep. We're talking several deep, a dozen deep, full of crowds and noise, and banners and advertisement boards, and just trackside detail in general. It just looks absolutely fantastic. Certainly, is one of the strongest games on this nomination list, in my opinion. What do you think, Alan?
I think MXGP3 looks stunning when we first saw it last year. I think there's it's not just you've got several areas. You've got the biker, the way the biker looks and moves. You've got the textured ground, which is deformable. You've got the crowds, which are immense, but then you've got the view outside the track, which is complete, goes for some miles as well. And you've got this sort of smoke and atmosphere that they've given it all, which as a combination works amazingly well. And then you have the rain effects and the options they have there. Of course, with the track being deformable, there's a lot of elements going on, and visually they've captured the sport as well as they possibly could, and it's very, very impressive. It's probably the surprise of the year in terms of how it looked, and I think they've done it's the best looking MX game of its type that's ever been made. So it really is very impressive, and of course it has all the environments it can. So to an extent, when you're making an official championship or competition, you are restricted somewhat by the environments you have, which is something that some of the other games we've mentioned here aren't necessarily restricted by. But either way, overall, a very impressive title in 2017.
Yeah, absolutely. So all the games we've covered in this award so far have been based on real-world licensed tracks. But of course, we have games like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, where they have no restriction whatsoever on the track designs, and they really went to town on the track designs of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It has to be said. In terms of the range, it's up there with Project Cars 2 almost. Nearly 50 unique tracks, unlike GT Sport that pads out the track selection pad in reverse variants. This is 50 unique tracks.
Wow.
What? Could you say something, Kevin?
No, I just said wow.
I'm sorry, I thought you were trying to.
Wow.
Never mind.
Wow.
It's like a cartoon, isn't it? They have sort of carte blanche. They can really sort of go to town.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and that imagination has come through in the track design, which looks absolutely fantastic. I mean, the Rainbow Road, which sort of brings back memories of the SNES edition, just looks absolutely magical, doesn't it?
Yep. It's not just that either. It's just the overall designs are terrific because you've got anti-gravity sections, you've got underwater sections. There's just so much variety in each lap. Often, and you mentioned the SNES Rainbow Road. There's a whole selection of remakes, like modernized versions of the old track. So you got I think it's 3 or 4 different versions of Rainbow Road from older games. You got the SNES version, the N64 version, the Wii version, and the new one from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So for a Mario Kart fan, absolutely phenomenal package. There's even an F-Zero track in there as well, actually, in the absence of a proper F-Zero sequel. Alan, have you got anything else to add on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe?
No, what you've seen? I mean, I've seen a lot of Mario Kart 8, and it's wonderful as ever. Nintendo's creativity is fantastic. They work around the limitations of the hardware in a way that you'd never realize because it looks so stunning, and it just has so much color and creativity. It maximizes the hardware. Just was brilliant work by Nintendo. What can you say? It really is another amazing bit of work by them. And as you also say, the range of the tracks as well is a really fantastic range. So in terms of range, in terms of graphics, it's amazing. Obviously, unlike some of the other tracks here, variants here, you have weather conditions and so on. You don't necessarily have all that, but you do have other sort of animations and bits and bobs going on the course. But overall, very impressive.
It makes up for it in the sheer variety, I think, because no 2 track is the same in this. And like you said, because they're fantasy tracks, they can really add other elements to it, other obstacles to avoid and things like that. But anyway, we need to decide on our winner now. So we'll just go over our picks then. Kevin, what's your pick for the best environment selection of 2017?
Oh, it's a tough one. It really is. I mean, my brain is telling me Project Cars 2,
Come on.
WRC 7, MXGP 3. I would say perhaps Project Cars 2 would edge it by a nose. It's that close. Just from the sheer variety, and I can go to all my fantastic British tracks and sort of really have a lot of fun there. So for me, I think Project Cars 2, but only just by a hair.
And you, Alan?
I've kind of struggled a bit on this one as well. I think for me, I think MXGP3 was a big surprise. Very impressive MXGP3. Because they've broken new ground in taking MXGP to that level in terms of detail, and of course the deformation in the ground. You've got Project Cars 2, which has the incredible range in there. The range is amazing in Project Cars 2, and it's a shame GT Sport was just coming together but didn't quite manage it before Christmas, because there are new additions and it is building, and it does have some really nice tracks in there. But GT Sport doesn't maximize its potential, and that's why it can't win. MXGP3 is impressive, but doesn't offer the range and the sort of dynamic weather and detail that something like Project Cars 2 offers. Project Cars 2, on paper, as far as the environment's concerned, offers unrivaled range in terms of times of day, weather, times of year, and the biggest track roster there, and a lot of detail. You can run almost any series you want to. So I think for me, Project Cars 2 is the winner there.
Yeah, same for me, to be honest. Project Cars 2. Like you said, by far the biggest track selection of any racing game release, really on this generation, I'd say, in terms of real-world licensed tracks. It has many tracks that you don't often see in racing games that players are often requesting. For motorsport fans, there really is no equal right now. There's no restrictions, so you can have whatever discipline and weather conditions you want on each track. And of course, the live track 3.0 also dynamically changes the track on each lap. So yeah, for me, it's Project Cars 2, followed closely by Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. But there you have it. Our winner for the best environment selection 2018 is Project Cars 2. Anyway, thanks for that discussion then. We'll have more awards coming very shortly, so stay tuned for more.
The Team VVV Awards 2018, sponsored by Ben Green Racing and Thrustmaster.